Released in 2005, Resident Evil 4 is a standout in the series, and is often cited by fans of Capcom survival horror games as their favorite. It marked a hard pivot for the franchise from horror to action, doing away with the fixed camera angles of the first 3 games, and arguably providing more resources for players to fight back. Over the past 2 decades, the game has received numerous re-releases, such as the HD version for the PS3 and Xbox 360 era, and ports of that to the following console generation, including the Switch. So when a remake of the game was announced in 2022, it left a lot of people puzzled. Why Resident Evil 4 and not Code Veronica, which arguably needed more of an update than 4? Was a remake of Resident Evil 4 really necessary when the original is still pretty dang good 20 years later? Yeah. Yeah, it was necessary. There. I saved you, like, however long this video ends up being, despite the fact that I am trying to make a shorter video here, by answering the question right off the bat. Also, let's be real. It was 4 and not Code Veronica because money. Which is fair. Jokes aside, my honest answer to that question, is the remake necessary, is yes, but it's complicated. So let's talk about it. A fair warning that while this isn't a deep dive, spoilers will be mentioned here and there. You have been warned. As mentioned at the top of the video, Resident Evil 4 marked a shift for the franchise, where it started to lean into action more than horror. This was in theory good. It made the games more palatable for some players who may, be big weenies. Case in point, me. I used to be very scared of the Resident Evil games, but 4 looked intriguing with its action and the story unraveling in different notes that you could piece together. The village at the beginning still gives a sense of horror because you can't mow down all the enemies, so all you can do is survive. But as you go further, you get used to it, and it ceases to be scary. Good for some, not so great for others. But once you get a taste of the series, you want to learn and experience more, and maybe realize that, oh wait, you know what? This genre of games actually is for me. That's all well and good, but it also changed the franchise forever. And perhaps not for the better. Resident Evil 5 is a pure action game. Many, including me, would argue that it's a great co-op experience. This game is insanely fun with a friend. But as a survival horror game, not so much. The only real horror in my playthrough was my longtime Resident Evil fan friend constantly putting her face in her hands as I died to bugs or whatever was out there. Chris punched a boulder though, which is incredible. I can't comment much on Resident Evil 6 because I've never been able to get into it, but perhaps that's telling in itself. A lot of people dump on this game, and not just because the logo looks like a dude is giving a giraffe, well, you know. It's long, it's convoluted. The game, not the giraffes. And for some reason, it goes way too far in its absurdity. It was a low moment for the franchise, which is why Resident Evil 7 was such a triumph. Capcom took the game back to its survival horror roots, replicating the fixed camera angle horror by placing you directly in the protagonist's shoes with a first-person view. For me personally, I can't really get into how this game plays, but I get why they did it and I respect it. They stripped back all the wild lore and delivered a solid experience. Sure, it goes off the rails in the third act, but what Resident Evil game doesn't? The franchise was back, which was good because in 2015 they'd approved of a remake of Resident Evil 2, the 1998 classic that many count as their favorite in the series, before although the running and gunning and pew 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 took over. In 2002, Capcom had released a remake of the original Resident Evil for the GameCube. In just 7 years, technology had advanced enough that it was an entirely different game in terms of visuals and controls. Remakes of the other PS1 era games seemed like a no-brainer, but they ended up being nowhere to be seen. This was later said to be because Shinji Mikami, the director of RE4, didn't want to draw resources away from that game, which, fair enough. But by the time Resident Evil 2's remake went into active development, we were up to the PS4 era of consoles. It was going to be a drastic change from the polygonal nature of the PS1 era game, and it was sorely needed. Also, with how things are in this day and age, how were they going to replicate the fixed camera angle horror of the original? To make a long story very short, the Mad Lads pulled it off. The horror vibes were still there. I love this game, and I know it like the back of my hand, and I still get nervous walking around these dark, cramped hallways. The 2019 Resident Evil 2 remake was followed up by an unfortunately timed 2020 Resident Evil 3 remake. It wasn't received nearly as well due to what felt like the rush nature of the game and the fact that it's missing content from the original game. It was good, but it could have been better. So when the RE4 remake got announced, fans, myself included, were understandably a little skeptical. Unlike the PS1 era games, we could easily play the original on modern consoles, and control-wise and everything, it held up quite well. Okay, we're done with the background crap, so let's talk about the remake and what it does for the game as a whole. You can move and shoot, so it automatically was totally worth it. That's sort of a joke, but also not really. The quality of life upgrades in the RE4 remake are insane, and you don't really think about it until you go back to the original. Moving and shooting is major. And sure, it would in theory make the game less scary because you can move around and are less vulnerable. But the enemies are, shall we say, a little tricksy in this game. I couldn't believe how many times someone still managed to get behind me and grab Leon.
Fuck you.
Another upgrade was the addition of the side missions. In addition to adding more content to the game, it provided currency for a special shop at the merchants where you could exchange them for different items. People liked the Blue Medallion side mission in the original, but that was the only quest of its kind, which was a bummer. These missions give the world more depth, inviting you to explore new areas or revisit places you've been to see if something's changed or if you can find something new. Ashley's mechanics are improved immensely. For many, she is the original escort mission. I'll point out that they did a good job in the original of pacing it where she'd get kidnapped before it became too tiresome, or, it was a conveniently placed dumpster you could tell Ashley to dive into. But you had to worry about healing her, and she screamed a lot. It was a whole thing. In the remake, the healing mechanic is gone. She can still get hurt, and you're in big trouble if that happens, but it's less intrusive, if that makes sense. It was a nice little upgrade. The lines in the original were still better, though.
Wait, follow me. Wait, follow me. Wait.
The lack of quick time events is a huge change for the better. This was the title for my stream when I did the Krauser cutscene fight in the original game. That's not great. QTEs were originally put in games to help break up the perceived monotony of the cutscenes and allow the player to take a more active role. The downside is that because the player doesn't quite know when a QTE is coming up, they're not really paying attention to said scene and instead hyper-focused on buttons popping up on screen that they'll need to quickly press lest they have to go through the whole dang scene again. Why? I get why QTEs are a thing, but also, if you want to break up the monotony of your cutscene, dude, just make a better cutscene. Resident Evil 4 Remake's cutscenes are amazing, frankly. I wouldn't say they're better written necessarily because the tone's a bit different between the original and the remake, and let's be real, the franchise has always been silly, so the cheese of the OG fit in with the Jill sandwich. But gone are the days where a voice actor was being directed half-assedly in someone's basement. It's clear that the cinematic director thought through things like blocking and camera angles. There was a specific vision in mind, and they executed it. A video game could get away with just plopping the camera down and running it, but they treated these cinematics like a freaking movie, and the results were awesome. Also, the actors actually got real direction, which was cool. Just a reminder that actors can only work with what they're given and all. Yada yada yada. Anyway. The biggest change, in my opinion, is to the story. The remake excels because of what it did for the narrative. It follows basically the same beats, but takes a deeper dive into things. The best example of this is the character of Luis Serra. I hated Luis in the original game. He was really annoying to me and just came off as kind of a dick. Okay, yeah, the ballistics line is funny, but it always rubbed me the wrong way. His backstory was a little convoluted too. Originally, he tells us he's a cop from Madrid, something that reeks of bullshit in the narrative, of course. We learn through notes and later his own confession that he's a researcher who worked for Sadler and was trying to escape. He had a change of heart and wanted to help Leon and Ashley, though we never see much of that beyond him trying to get a suppressant to them. There's even this little tidbit in one note where we learn that Luis might actually be from the village we see in the beginning, Valdelobos. The memos are good in fleshing out his character, but they're easy to miss. As a side note, it always makes me laugh that even though he introduced himself to Leon as Luis, like pronunciation and all, Leon is constantly like,
Louis.
Like, was that intentional? Was the vocal director just asleep at the wheel? Or is Leon just kind of an idiot? Maybe it's all of the above. My point is that in the narrative, Luis comes off as flat. The memos expand his character, but that's telling, not showing. We never really see this in the game itself, so when he dies, it's just sort of like, well, sorry, let me step over your body. Luis in the remake gets a massive upgrade, in my opinion. He's still a bit of a bastard. His introductory scene has him being a smartass and then leaving Leon chained up while he runs off to who knows where. But we see how conflicted he gets as the game goes on. This is a man faced with the severe consequences of his actions, something he'd been turning a blind eye to for so long. In this instance, memos are used once again to expand on Luis as a character, but to a different effect. Even without reading them, we'd still get all of this from the game. What's really good is how the memos unravel Luis's backstory without slapping you upside the head like,
Hey, look at this. It's his backstory. Look at it.
let me explain. So at one point in the game, you get to this burnt lake house. It's like in the first chapter. One of the collectibles is what's described as a photo of a man and his grandson. Okay, cool, whatever. Moving on. In the basement of the house, you find Luis tied up. Okay, sure. Later on, Hunnigan sends us a dossier on Luis. His full name is Luis Serra Navarro, and it turns out he's a former Umbrella researcher. Also, apparently literally nothing exists about him prior to his university days, which is wild, but whatever. Screw this guy. After you gain access to a boat, you can come back to this lake house area and explore more with the key you've acquired. What you can also do is go back into the lake house itself and go into the basement where you found Luis. There's a treasure down there, so that's good for our greed, and you'd be guided there by the treasure map if you pick that up from the merchant. But there's also an old man's journal right by that treasure. In it, the man describes life raising his young grandson in this remote village. His grandson is quite smart and has a fondness for Don Quixote. In just a few short pages, we really get a sense for how much they care about each other, which makes the man's decline after being bitten by an infected wolf pretty dang sad. Anyway, that's sad and all, but this ain't got shit to do with us, so, see ya! Even later on, you can go back to the village chief's mansion, something you'll want to do because there's treasure markers in a spot you can now get to with Ashley. There's 2 items of note in here in addition to the treasure. The village chief's journal, which presumably is Mendez giving context clues, has the chief talking about taking over for the previous chief and really feeling the weight of his duties. He also talks about the old man and his grandson, and we know it's the same guys because of the Don Quixote references. The chief then goes on to expound upon his last conversation with the old man, where the man asks him to do what's necessary, if needed. The journal ends with that lake house being on fire while the grandson watches, only for the boy to disappear the following morning. So, the implications in all this are that Mendez torched the place because the old man was infected, and he just had to die, and Mendez did it with the old man's blessing, basically. And the grandson is now in the wind. Except, there's one more item here. But it's weird. It's the same photo we saw back at the lake house of the old man and his grandson. The only difference is that this one has something else written on the back. The Navarro family. And if you still weren't convinced that this was Luis's backstory, he lays it on thick with the Don Quixote references in chapter 11. To me, this is wild. And it isn't just telling us the backstory either. You don't twig to it immediately. Rather, it has to slowly unfold before you, culminating in a very quiet reveal that only hits if you, the player, put the pieces together. And the thing is, Even if you miss these documents or just don't feel like reading them, it's okay because you still get the idea of who Luis is as a character, thanks to the writing and Andre Peña's incredible performance. This is just the gravy on top. Luis isn't the only character to get this treatment, though I would argue that he gets it the most. Ada's role is expanded, and the game delves more into the shades of gray in regards to her character. And by doing so, ultimately, we see that she makes a very different choice at the end of the game. Even Mendez, the chief of Valdelobos, is expanded upon. This is mostly in memos, yeah, which I said was telling, not showing, but we see the man more with his people and his values, and he actually talks more beyond the same blood. Also, just like, shout out to Marcio Moreno, the actor behind Ramon Salazar. In the original game, Salazar's voice and antics were iconic, but also very, very silly. Well, that's why they were iconic. In my opinion, Salazar in the remake finally straddles the line of ridiculous and dangerous. He's weird and off-putting, and a little funny at times, but he's no joke. This is clearly a man who will end you with the snap of his fingers, and Moreno's performance is a key reason why it all works. His voice evokes the higher-pitched nature of the original and appeals to our nostalgia, but he ultimately makes it all his own and gives him this sort of vicious edge to it. I could go on about the character work and story stuff, but I wanted to make a shorter video. Oops. The story itself is more streamlined and smooths things out. From how Ashley gets separated from Leon multiple times to how they choose to show Leon's Plaga infection manifesting, it all just makes for a tighter experience. Let's circle back to the question posed at the beginning of the video. Does this remake need to exist? Was it really necessary? My argument is that yes, it does. Its existence doesn't take away from the original game. Rather, it elevates it. Playing the remake made me go back to the original, which in turn made me see some things I'd missed before. The remake takes the concepts of the original and enhances them, offering a new experience that you can't exactly classify as better. I say that because honestly, at the end of the day, they're two different games. The original Resident Evil 4 had its tongue firmly in its cheek at parts, and leans into the cheesy action hero nonsense that the franchise loved to embrace around that time. This version is more grounded in the same vein as the 2 and 3 remakes, but still keeps the same sense of fun that the original had. If anything, the remake helps introduce the original to a new generation of gamers. Some might think it's a bit old just by looking at it on its face, but after experiencing the remake, they'd probably be inclined to give the original a shot just to experience more of the game as a whole. That's the beauty of a good remake. It doesn't undo the original, but examines it from a different perspective. Like, when we talk about movies, I hate the Lion King live-action remake. You can't see it, but I'm doing air quotes because it's animated, you guys. It's animated. It was literally a shot-for-shot remake, like the original. Except for the part about the lion fur getting shit out, that was weird. But Ocean's 11 is a good example. It took a silly Rat Pack film and made it something different. Of course, the concept is different in the medium of video games, but you get what I'm trying to say here. They did good. This wasn't just a cash grab like so many remakes can be. The creative team genuinely sat down and thought everything out, honoring the original game while daring to do their own thing. The original is one of my favorite games, and thankfully, I can say the same holds true for the remake. Thank you guys so much for watching. If this is your first time seeing one of my videos, hi! My name is Jury, and I like to yap about all sorts of things here and there. I stream games pretty regularly right here on my channel, and I talk a lot about stuff like this while playing. If you like this video, please drop a like and a comment. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.